Mike, I have certain behaviors that I just really want to stop. And I know that there are things I don't want to be doing, but I just feel like I have a hard time with it. Why is it that I just can't stop?
Wow, that is like the ultimate question. We were talking a little bit before we came on. Is like in observing others, our family we were talking about is like, and a non-recovering person or a recovering person or a non-addict says to the addict, "Why don't you just stop?" And wouldn't
Yeah.
that be the center question, the ultimate question of all behavioral change process of behaviors that no longer serve you?
It is. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you so much for being here, Mike, on my episode of Dr. Cammy Goes Keto, where we're going to be talking about why is it that you just can't stop? And, when you look at addiction, we were having a really great conversation before we started recording about life and how, does life happen to you or does life happen for you? And how is it that you're looking at life and this whole thing that I have in my mind about being at cause in your life versus being an effect of your life? Like, are
Mhm.
you at cause for what happens in your life? Like you're out there, creating and manifesting and putting ideas out there that you want to grow and, be at cause in your life? Or do you just sit around as a victim and say, oh, my poor life, this is terrible things are happening to me, and sit there and be in effect of your life and just be a victim all the time? I think that has a lot to do with whether or not you'll be able to stop your addictions.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're asking the same question of like, I get it all the time. I mean, something stops serving you. An addict of any stripe, drinking, smoking, food, whatever, you just seem to. And I really, in my heart, I know after being one and going through it, and I know anybody that has reached that point in life where they say, I got to quit smoking. I got to quit eating sugar and ultra processed carbohydrates. I got to quit drinking. Whatever it is, they are very, very honest in their desire. They're very, very genuine in their desire. They really, really want to do it. Right. They just, and then they can't. Right. And then A, they chastise themselves, and B, society chastises them, right? Or their family chastises them because they were unable to fulfill the promise that they, in good faith, made to themselves and to others, right? And this
Mhm.
has always been the core of the addiction argument. In getting to be named a disease as alcoholism, and likely sooner than later sugar and ultra processed carbohydrates, ultra processed food use disorder. But honestly, I think what's the exciting part about it is this advent of metabolic psychiatry, where we're starting to realize, like a broken arm, like a fatty liver, the brain and the effects of the substances themselves, be it the nicotine, the alcohol, or the ultra processed carbohydrates, have created a problem in the brain, in the literal processing of emotions, of thoughts, of control, of everything. And it is, that when you're quote unquote on the stuff, it just seems to be harder to get off the stuff. So that abstinence has always been a part of it, always been a key part of it. And that when you get a little bit of distance from whatever it is, then you're able to, in my world now, I believe heal. You're healing. And this is where I think a lot of the metabolic psychiatry stuff in alcohol or nicotine or other substances, that the metabolic psychiatry, where we're starting to find out that sugar and ultra processed carbohydrates are affecting the same reward centers. And I think this is going to be such a big development in the world as far as behavioral change, that you can heal your brain, and there will be a prescription for it, meaning like you're putting a cast on a broken arm, you're going to have to go And I think the terminology is, what is it? Therapeutic ketosis. You're going to have,
Therapeutic carbohydrate restriction,
correct. Yes.
TCR, will put
Yes.
you into therapeutic ketosis.
Right. And you're going to have to do that if this is something that you want to pursue, or if you think that might be the issue. And only and it's going to be a few years before it is a proven scientific fact and that it works for a great majority of people. But you and I both know that it's already working for tens of thousands, and, you know, and it's, people always ask me, how'd you do it? I like, and I think it belies more the answer to your question, which is the first part of that process, which includes withdrawals and behavioral change and cravings and being drawn back to it, because it gives you something. It's imperceptible when it's sugar and flour, but it is some type of soothing. Alcohol, you know what it is, you
Mm-hmm.
know the soothing. Nicotine, you know what the soothing is, or you can feel it almost like immediately. And if you do a lot, then it definitely works. But the ultra processed carbs and sugar, the soothing is not as buzzy as we talked about last week, I don't know. It's a really interesting thought problem. Really interesting.
It really is. And I think that, like, for me and from what I've seen, I think you have to be ready for the change. You have to be willing, like, how you were saying, you can give it in your heart of hearts, you really want to quit, but I think you have to really be ready to quit. And what makes you ready? I think part of what makes you ready is that it doesn't work anymore. Like for me, the
Or
ultra
adverse
processed,
consequences.
the adverse consequences start to become so severe. And, for me, just having a big fatty liver and my insulin resistance going up and up and up. And I didn't really realize all this, but along the same time that all that was happening, I was binging on such massive amounts of food that, like, I physically couldn't get off of the couch. And, it was really starting to affect, my life, and my body was getting so big that I couldn't function. I couldn't work right. I couldn't get in and out of the car, and I couldn't carry my groceries up the stairs. And, you're starting to see that the destruction is starting to get so bad that it might be worth it to consider giving up that soothing and that comfort, for learning new ways of being and new mechanisms, new coping mechanisms to take care of yourself in a healthier way. It has to be like the right combination. You have to, be ready. You have to be motivated. You have to have a lot of courage. You have to be willing to give up things. You have to have enough self-esteem and be willing to work, for yourself to get yourself healthier. There's so many different parts of it, I think, that come into play to make somebody ready to stop an addiction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ways you're describing a bottom, which I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of a bottom in general. I think being ready is a better way to look at it. You know what I mean? Being ready to change. And I think, in the history of recoveries of all types, I think stories have worked. I think the difficulty is convincing someone that on the other side of the abstinence, or even if it's a temporary abstinence, but hopefully a long-term lifetime abstinence, is that it's so much better, right? Once you work through it, and the only way to transfer that knowledge, that knowing, is the stories of people who've been there and done that. That's the only way that seems to get the message across to people. And a lot of times in right along with your being ready is you have to be willing to listen to that and step out on a little bit of faith that they're not lying to you. Why would they lie? Some of them have pictures of 100-pound weight loss. You know what I mean? Why would they lie to you to tell you that this is the way they did it and this is what worked for them and this is how they felt then? and this is how they feel now. I mean, and so I think I bring up this book often, but it does bear repeating. It's called Change or Die, which was largely about cigarettes 25 years ago. The book's old, and it said fear does not work and facts do not work. So you can tell them all the science on the planet. You can tell them, you can scare them to death of what they're going to die of and how miserable their life is going to be. Not going to work. It has to be a story of a positive change that happened to someone else that they know, like, and trust, or they have become not knowledgeable of, and they're willing to accept on faith a little bit the next step for them, you know?
I love that, Mike. That's so excellent because, fear and facts don't work, but faith will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to have a little bit.
It can be a religious faith, but it also can be not an agnostic faith, but a human faith in another person, another person's story or another group story.
Mm-hmm.
Who a lot of people in the group seem to have the same process or have gone through the same process.
And that's why I think that group therapy and being in, I don't want to call it therapy, group sessions, groups, just being in the same room full of people that have the same issues and that understanding and helping each other through those times. We're learning more and more about how helpful that is for success.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and that's another thing, to be honest, that's hard to transmute to someone. To say that, I don't want to be in a group. I don't want to talk. I don't want to, expose my weaknesses with that. People think about their weaknesses and their shameful stuff. They don't want to talk about it. And I get that. I mean, I was exactly like that. But it's like, my old phrase, you got to let the information light on you a little bit. Just listen for a little bit. Listen. And then if you want to participate. But, and yeah, I mean, I think you're narrowing in on the biggest, one of the biggest, if not the biggest thought problems and the intersection of what may possibly be the scientific reasoning for it, which is the healing of the brain, right? It's how do I do X or how do I, change my behavior around something that no longer serves me when I've tried so many times and failed so many times alone, right? They've tried it alone. They've read a lot of information and they're afraid. They have a parent or a sibling. I mean, this got started with us talking about your siblings and my siblings earlier before we came on, where, we would be afraid that if we were doing the behaviors that they were doing, whether it's drinking or smoking or food, that maybe this would happen to us or a parent or something. Mm-hmm. And the parents and the science is now catching up. The diabetes 3 is being called, Alzheimer's being called diabetes 3. And people are starting to realize, they don't want to do that to their children. They don't want to. So, it's that whatever the catalyst is, it's always different for everyone. I think the phrase is everyone has different bottoms. Again, not a fan of that, but I think if it could be better stated that everyone has different, thresholds of pain, right? Thresholds of what they can endure.
There you go.
Traditionally, addicts have a pretty high threshold for pain in general, And so if their threshold for pain is high and it's harder for them they can handle it. And the handling it is such a weird thing. Like, it's such a fake life, it's such a, you're just different with people. It's like you're an actor who's always on stage, like the person who's obviously has a food issue or an alcohol issue, and in public, they don't drink and they don't eat, and they're like, oh, I hardly eat any sweets or whatever. And I'm able to laugh about this because I've been on the other side of 100-pound weight losses where people say, Mike, when we first met, I was lying to you. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's okay.
Yeah, well, it's a hard reality.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's hard. And we talk about the word hard a lot here. I think maybe to prepare people. I don't know. Do you think well, I mean, obviously you've articulated it a lot. It is hard, but like, again, I'm not a fan of the David Goggins choose your hard stuff, but maybe a little bit of that at the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would say, well, and for me, it kind of goes back to your motivation. I mean, how hard are you willing to work?
Right.
I was willing to work pretty hard because I made a decision that I wanted to live, and I
Mm,
want to live a really great life, and I want to be healthy.
mm.
And so when you start, as you start your journey, it's hard. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
First part is hard. Yes.
And I don't know if hard is a good word. Maybe it's different. It's new. It's
Mm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's,
Cool is good. Yeah.
it's a little frustrating. It's, like it's just different.
Yeah.
But you have to be able, and I think that's why it's really important. Like, I remember, like, a year ago, how I was so into trying to look at my ALKs, I call them, acts of loving kindness,
Right.
and doing things that, you need to do to raise your dopamine levels and your serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, cannabinoids, and all those ones that you say. And now I just feel like I kind of do those things naturally. It's easier to do
Right.
those things. It's easier to do like a little 5-minute meditation, or it's easier to lay down on my bed for 10 minutes, or it's easier to call somebody. It's easier, and the other thing that's been happening for me that I think is really great too, is I can preempt things. Like, I'm getting ready when we're done taping, I'm going to go over and be with my sister who has dementia, and there's all kinds of issues going on there. And I'm going to do a little 5-minute meditation before I walk in, where I'm going to be thinking about, good things and calming myself and
Right.
being able to act and not react, and, all those kinds of things, so that you can even preempt those things, so that you don't, so that when it happens, and maybe it doesn't happen, but when it happens, you're ready to roll.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I learn new things like that all the time, and breath work and, like centering and vagus nerve stuff and all that. I think that's a wonderful technique. And I think it's super important and left out of a lot of people's, especially when they have an easy button we've talked about, where they can just ingest something and get that quick soothing. I mean, now we've beaten the dead horse of, sugar or whatever being a ultra processed carbohydrates being a soothing agent that you learn very young, as opposed to learning new or different ones, like we've talked about exercise or, self-soothing and other methods. Right. And I think these are things that you need to bring to bear in the beginning difficult times, and develop those muscles of those actions, those substance or effort-based dopamine versus substance-based dopamine. So you're not continuously pushing the easy button. It's like, it is truly analogous to the morphine drip, where the patient can push their own button, like, oh, I'm in pain, and push the
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was talking about, or thinking about when you were talking, is that the ratio of comfort, I've seen this now and it's online memes and stuff, is that the worst addiction in the world is this addiction to comfort, right? And safety and security. And it's like, but let's just stick with comfort for right now, is that, the ratio of how much you're supposed to be comfortable, I think, is totally backwards. So,
Uh,
we endeavor to be comfortable, soothe 70, 80% of the time, when in reality, the stress is required to live. But you have to be able to manage it too. And so it's reversed. It should be, 80% of the time you're handling the stress in better ways, and then 20% of the time you're comfortable, and and soothed and rested, whatever. So I just, I think that people have the ratio backwards, and I think they're not. And it's hard to change, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you grew up with that easy button of let me just, and again, largely we've said it 100 times on this podcast, but it's just an unconscious effort. I mean, it's an unconscious action that happens when you get a little stressed or a lot stressed, and so your other methods of soothing atrophy, right? And also we haven't talked much. We did a little bit about the therapeutic ketosis, but I'm beginning to believe that there needs to be a healing that happens, a physical healing of the brain,
Yes.
biochemical healing of the brain in order to get to the other side. And in order to do that, you need to engage all of these processes of effort-based dopamine, these things that take effort in order to soothe yourself, that don't require the easy button that is sugar.
Right. And it takes time. That's the other thing. It takes time to develop
Much more. Well, it also takes much more time to execute on them. Like you could just have a bag of cookies and, a walk takes an hour or whatever, you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. And the other thing too is that with the bag of cookies, you get that immediate high, right? You
Yeah.
get that sugar fix. And, the walk, I mean, I don't know, it's 20 or 30 minutes into a good bike ride or a good walk before I start feeling like that little high from it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's so funny. I actually gauge a lot of my walks like that. Like it's about half usually, but depending on, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever. And, for 20 minutes, I'm, talking, thinking about this thing and that thing. And then the last half, I'm like, you're just kind of looking at the trees. It's kind of gets to be perceptible if you're paying attention, which is similar to like, cookie, 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 cookie. You know what I mean? It's like you can feel it, but it required effort. So yeah, I mean, it's
Well, and I
so funny
remember,
that you and I have had such logical discussions about this. And like, I think we've really formulated a lot of positive, like, help for people, but it's still people struggle.
I hope so. I hope we're helping people. That's the whole goal of these videos is,
Right.
to help other people and to keep myself accountable for my own journey and
Yeah.
what's been going on. And yeah, I really wish things were happen quicker. But the thing that's so interesting now is that I'm kind of feeling like I'm into my journey more,
Mhm.
and like today I'm 70. I actually counted today. I haven't been really counting, but I'm 72 days into no sugar, no flour, caffeine. And before that, I went 52 days. And before that, I went 92 days. So, and like they're building upon themselves. And thanks, Mike. And yeah, it's really fun. But the patience of it all. And then the whole weight thing, like the last thing to happen is the weight comes off,
Mm.
and so that's been just really, really slow. Even on the Zepbound for me, I'm on Zepbound and I'm losing between 1.5 pounds and 2 pounds a week fairly
Nice.
consistently over the last 72 days. So I don't know however many pounds that is,
Right.
but it's, it requires patience. But when you're doing all these other self-soothing methods, you get more patience, right? When you're learning how to walk and you're learning how to meditate and you're learning breathing techniques to calm yourself down and you're learning how to listen to your body and feed it when it's hungry and sleep when it's tired and doing all those things. It makes managing it a little bit easier.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, is a compounding effect of sorts where as you consistently do the more difficult stuff, the benefits multiply. They don't just, it's not linear. They compound in an exponential way, especially if you start adding them all together, do them all together, or not, at the same time, but you're adding them to your life. Whereas their counterpart, the easy button sugar stuff, uh, is only denigrating. It works for 20 minutes, and then you have to reingest and reingest. But then it's also the other side is like, it's like taking out of your bank account, right? It's like the balance of your dopamine receptors and everything else goes down and down. And yeah, it's just, whereas exercise is putting money into that self-soothing bank account, or all the others.
Yeah, you have to keep your tank full,
Right.
your spiritual tank, or, your happy tank, your positive tank. You have to keep that full and ready so that when life comes at you and you get a big knock and, something knocks you down, you have the wherewithal to tolerate it in a healthy way because you've built up all of that strength and energy in your tank.
Yes. Yes. And especially if life throws you a big curveball and it's difficult, it's a death or a divorce or something, it's like you want to be, or a stressful situation, like now you have a mother and a sister who's having difficulties in that way. You know, you're dealing. I mean, I never in the early days of my recovery liked the idea that it makes sense now, but I had a lousy day. I feel crappy, but at least I'm feeling kind of idea, It's like,
Uh-huh.
and where you have to like go through, and I think this missing piece, this absence of this in the sugar reduction or ultra processed carbohydrate reduction business work, it's not as prevalently taught or talked about that that your feelings are returning in a more holistic way. They're real, and they can't be easily sloughed under the carpet with some sugar. They have to be
Mhm.
faced. They have to be dealt with, and a lifetime of avoiding it with substances is the bill is due now, right? And you have to develop all the practices that we've talked about, which is exercise and breath work and meditation and prayer, group community, hugs, all of the, nourishing, whole, healthy food. All of these things are going to throw you good dopamine. I mean, now there's biological, scientific evidence of what we're talking about. Before, in
Mhm.
the early days, there was only a pattern recognition discovery that these are the things that you had to deal with. Now we have the benefit of science telling us that 70 years of AA was right. You know that it's so it's hard. I mean, it's hard for people to, and it's almost like I always in the early days thought of it. And I kind of got a little bit of jazz from it when I kind of accepted it to belong to a subculture of society. You know what I mean? It was a different subculture. It was a different, I kind of like being a little different, especially when there became positive results from, right? Had its own language, had its own, quirks and whatever. And the people were very loving because they'd all partied harder than I did. And the same
Yeah.
thing I think happens with the sugar and stuff. You start to realize that, wow, these people who used to be like me and used to be heavy and used to be sick are now healthy and smiling. And I want to belong to this subculture.
Right. Yeah, you want to be a part of the group that's doing what you want to do, that's being successful and being healthy and
Right.
hopefully going to live a longer, healthier life and be
Right.
able to be there for others and connect and enjoy and all those things as opposed to just binging on your couch till you can't move off of it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this video has given you some ideas of how to stop and, to just stay on. I think one of the things that I wanted to also say was that for me, it's been really important to just keep trying, like just stay on the bandwagon, like just, cause with the food, it's so different for me than with the alcohol. The alcohol was so much easier to quit than the sugar for sure, because the sugar is just laden all over your life. And, you just have to keep trying. Like, when you slip, you just get back up and get back on track as fast as you can. And for me, sometimes that would be weeks, or the last binge I had was 8 days long to get back on track. But, I always kept coming back on track. And that's one of the things I like about having this YouTube channel. And, Mike and I had a discussion about actually stopping this channel for a while because I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to have a little more privacy around my healing. And then I decided that I think it's good for me. It's good for others to be out there. And, we've got our own little following on our little No Sugar Nation, No Sugar Nation. Got my shirt on that Nikki gave me. And so, yeah, it's, something that you just gotta, it will happen, right? You gotta have that faith and it will happen if you just keep trying. It'll get better and better and better.
Yes, absolutely. Again, we're kind of back, and we'll end it with this, I guess, if you want, but we're back to one of my mentors said something that I really love, and he, and I believe it, and I live by it. It's like, who do you want to be a hero to? Right. And when I say it, I mean, in this circumstance is like, what tribe do you want to belong to? What do you want to belong to, the sickly, overweight kind of tribe, or do you want to belong to the healthy group and is it worth getting out of your comfort zone to try that, to try something different? And have you tried all the other ways, quote unquote, alone? All the diets, all the pills, all the shots. Have you tried all that stuff alone? And if you haven't, or if you have, then maybe a new little way of trying to do it would work for you.
Right. And that's why group support is so important. And I'll put the links in my description and in my first comments about Mike Collins' 30-day sugar detox challenge, which has helped, tens of thousands of people get off of sugar, and No Sugar Nation, which is on School, SKOOL, on the School platform. And there's a wonderful community of people there that are doing the deal. And we're seeing miracles in there. We're seeing people that couldn't go a day without sugar, going 30 days and, allowing that brain to get some time to heal.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's really kind of amazing, to be honest with you. It's so different to see people. I mean, literally, they transform before your very eyes on Zoom. The face gets thinner. They become more articulate. They feel like there's energy flowing through them in short periods of time, too, doesn't take forever.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thanks, Mike, for being with me.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.